right. Well, first, I would just like to welcome everyone to our April STalks Beef webinar. If this is your first time to join on to one of our webinars, my name is Haley Herzog, and I am the STgenetics Beef Marketing Representative. So I do our social media pages, help lead these webinars alongside Ben, and keep our website updated and handle a lot of our footnotes and photos and videos and stuff like that with the breeders and the bull owners. So if you need anything marketing related, don't hesitate to email me. Tonight we're going to get started with our topic that's quarter CC straw strategies and handling. So tonight I'm going to show you guys a quick video first of one of our regional managers, Jared Herbst, who's on here tonight. And he did a YouTube video a couple of months ago. Jared, I'm not really sure when you put it up because I saw it before we did our fall catalog. But it's a great video, and he really goes into depth about quarter CC straws, and it's on YouTube. So I'm going to show it to you guys here in a second. But first, I would just like to say thanks for joining tonight. And if everyone could just keep your microphones on mute until we do kind of the question and the answer at the end. That way you'll be able to hear the video and all of our regional managers talk about tonight's topic. Okay, Jared, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Just kind of tell me when to stop and you want to say some stuff.
I was going to say, you already caught my introduction. So yeah, this was a video that Ryan Effling and I made back, actually, John Jackson was doing an AI school a couple of years ago. And we took just a few minutes after the AI school to kind of go through some of these procedures and try to catch everything on video and get some up close pictures. I know it's some of this is hard to explain over the phone, but I don't know. You can keep playing, Haley, if you want.
Okay. So I think here you're just kind of describing what each straw is. Pink.
Yeah, so basically at ST, we package semen in 3 different types of straws. The first is the green straws, and that would be all conventional semen. And to try to package it in some sort of color to keep the UV rays out. This would be sexed male semen. It all comes in blue package straws. And everything should come in a color-coded top also. So the sexed male will be a blue top. And then the sexed female, we'll see here in a minute, will be a pink top with pink straws. And so those tweezers, you can pause for just a second, Haley, maybe go back 10 seconds. So those tweezers, there's red tweezers for quarter CC straws, and then there's white tweezers. In fact, I thought I had some here, but white tweezers for half CCs, red for quarters, and they're kind of angled, so it does take maybe a little bit of practice to get the angle right. But there you can see about the angle I'm holding it. And actually, you know, I get a lot of people that will comment, say, "Oh, I hate those tweezers. Do I have to use tweezers?" And you know, it's personal preference. I mean, textbook is use the tweezers. You know, I've had guys that say, well, we've done a study with, you know, using tweezers and using our fingers and there's no difference. Yeah, that might be. I don't want to argue with anybody on that. But, you know, for me personally, it's actually easier to get the quarter CC straws out with the tweezers just because my hands get shaky and I fumble around there. And I feel like I've actually got more control with the tweezers. Especially getting it out of the bottom. You know, when that top goblet is so close to those bottom straws, it can be kind of difficult sometimes. And some people will take, you know, they use the top first and then they'll take that goblet off and use the bottom. I like to leave that top on there all the time because sometimes I'll drop that rack back in the tank, and those straws will have a tendency to bounce right out of the top of there if you don't keep something on top of that. So, you know, for me, it's actually a little easier to use the tweezers in that kind of application. But you can go ahead and continue, Haley, and then pause it when we get to the guns. And so there's three types of guns that are out there. I mean, there's a jillion types of guns, but they all come down to three main qualities. On the left, you have a universal gun, and in the middle, you have a half cc gun, and on the right, you have a quarter cc gun. So the important thing to know is that the outside diameter of all the guns, whatever you buy, is all going to be the same. And so consequently, the size of sheath is going to be the same. Now, there's some other differences in sheaths that we'll talk about here in a second. But the gun on the left, the universal gun, it's got a thin walled outside barrel, and then it's got a quarter cc plunger. So it's got a smaller plunger. The plunger in the gun on the left and the gun on the right are the same diameter. The gun in the middle has got a little bigger plunger for a half cc only. And so one of the challenges we have with quarter cc straws, they work really well in a quarter cc gun, the one on the right. They work really well. When you can pull that plunger back all the way, you can put the straw in there, and that plunger will pretty much seat perfectly almost every time. The universal gun, you can kind of see by looking at the picture that's the one on the left. If you pull that plunger back and then you put the straw in there, there is a little bit of wiggle room between the straw and the outside gun diameter. And so when you go to push that plunger back in, one of two things can happen. It can either, the plunger can get wedged in between the straw and the gun, the outside diameter of the gun. And when you push that plunger, consequently, it will just rub right down the side of that straw, and it'll destroy the straw. The second thing that can happen is it can catch a lip of the straw, and it will mash the end of that straw if you push on it too hard. And so then you're kind of done there. So, the most common question I get is, or concern, if you will, is a quarter cc straw in a universal gun. And there's two tricks, I guess, that I'll share is how I do it. Maybe the other guys have something different that's better. But if I can load that straw, let me see, I've got a straw here. You can see how on that universal gun that the plunger pokes out. I don't know if you can see this very good, but basically, if I can go ahead and just pop that, that's a half cc. If I load that straw over the plunger first, and then I get my sheath, and I put it over the top, and I kind of pull that back on one motion, then I know that my plunger, even though it's back, it's already loaded on that straw. Where people get into trouble, like I was saying before, is, okay, there's no straw. They'll go ahead and pull that plunger all the way back, and then they'll take the straw and just throw it in there and then put the sheath over the top. That's when you'll have more problems, is kind of what I've noticed. Does anybody else have anything else to add in on that?
Luke, what are your thoughts on the different gun types and quarter cc straws, Luke?
Yeah, I think Jared's got good points. I think a lot of it just boils down to your personal preference. Everybody's kind of different. You got a lot of people that started on the donut style guns, and it seems like those people won't ever try anything else because they're so attached to them. But a lot of it's personal preference. But yeah, I pretty much agree with Jared. The way that he just described loading them, I think, will help eliminate a lot of that. I know some guys too, especially if it's real cold conditions, sometimes people will load their gun warmer with the sheaths, and then they'll actually drop the straw down in the sheath and then put the gun, insert the gun to the sheath. I know that can kind of cause some problems too if you're not a little bit careful. And obviously those plungers, they're destined to get bent. So, you just got to keep that in mind if you are going to use a universal gun. If I will say, if you start to depress the plunger and you do feel more resistance than what is normal. I think a lot of us just have the kind of the urge to just force it. But if you start pushing and you got more resistance than normal, just stop right there, and you can still probably reseed it and be good to go. But I don't know, it seems like a lot of us, our initial instinct is just to force it and jam it. But yeah, like Jared said, if you use a specific quarter cc gun like the one you see there on the right with the thicker barrel, that issue is pretty much non-existent.
Yeah, I will say kind of what Luke said too. If you get there, if you mess up or you pull your plunger back and you realize you're not seated, and you push that plunger up and you feel some resistance, it seems to always work for me to take, because of the nature of the plungers are always bent, and none of these are in the center. So if you'll take that plunger and rotate it and twist it and kind of apply just a little bit of pressure, you'll kind of feel it click in there most of the time. And so that's kind of a way, if you're adamant that you're going to pull the plunger back first and then put your straw in the gun, that's fine. But just, give that gun a little bit of a twist as you apply pressure, and you can usually feel that seat. So I think you can go ahead and keep rolling, Haley. Yeah, I mean, with these new thaw units, they're nice because they've got the digital readout. I grew up with I don't want to say a manual, but there's three kinds. There's a manual, and then there's an electric, non-digital, and then there's a digital. The manual is a red, kind of a red plastic, and that one you've got to manually control the temperature with the water that you put in it. And I don't see those used very often. Few guys that just want something on a budget, it works. But they've got the middle style would be, you plug it in and it maintains temperature. Everybody's probably seen those little card thermometers or a little dial thermometer to watch those. And then the digital kind of is what everybody's going to now. But always just make sure, that the light's green. When you start doing these big heifer projects or big cow projects, you're putting 4 or 5 units in at a time. It can be a little hard to tell somebody to slow down on either on the breeding or on the loading cows in the chute or whatever. But sometimes you have to wait for that to heat up. Just when you're putting a lot of semen in those things, they can get behind. So just always make sure you're watching that.
Jared, I think that brings up another question for all the other regional managers on here tonight, and certainly thank you for your time being on here. But with the transition to the quarter cc straws, and I know we've been that way for a little while now, but is the water bath, does that temperature, does it need to stay the same as with a half cc straw, or is it different?
I use the same thaw bath for everything. There's no adjustment like these new models. There's really no adjustment. You just kind of roll with what they give you. And my experience has been that there's no need to have a different temperature. But if anybody else has any comments, you sure chime in. Thaw time between a half cc and quarter cc will be the same. I think you actually on a quarter cc unit, I think you get a little better thaw, just because that straw is not quite as thick. There's more surface area to volume ratio. The center of that straw, the semen that's frozen in the center of the straw will actually thaw faster in a quarter cc than a half cc. And I think it's a little more instant, a little faster. Maybe not instant, but a little faster. I don't know that there's really enough difference there, to attribute that to any sort of increased conception across the board. I think, Ben, you could probably touch on it. a few studies out there that might indicate a 0.5 to 1% increase in conception rate among qualified and trained technicians. But, by and large, I would say if anything, it should be a little better versus a little worse.
Oh, yeah, that's absolutely it, Jared. You mentioned it, that surface to volume ratio, and the thaw time, the minimum thaw time still being the same, 45 seconds for quarters or halves, but as you kind of alluded to, that the maximum thaw time would be a little bit reduced with the quarter cc straws of the amount of time to leave it in a water bath or a thaw unit compared to the conventional semen, because of what you mentioned, the smaller total volume in those quarter cc straws.
Yeah, and I know we've got an ISR out here. Phil Mamer does a great job in Boise. He brought it to my attention here a week or two ago, webinar and study done by Dr. Joe Dalton out here, University of Idaho. They recommended, 4 or 5 minutes in the thaw bath versus 10. So, just be a little cognizant of that when you're using that you're not thawing too much at one time, and try to get it used up in a timely manner. So
I think one other thing to just throw out is all of the AI recommendations are actually included in our spring 2022 SIRE directory on page 71. That it would have the suggested thaw times and thaw unit temperature of 95 to 98 degrees. And you saw on the digital temperature there a little bit ago was 96.8 right there in the middle. And so page 71 in the SIRE directory would be a really good handy resource with all of that, all of those recommendations.
And the other thing I didn't touch on with the tweezers, and you'll see right here, you can see the frost line in that tank. But you can actually, for me, you can get down in that tank a little farther with the tweezers than my fingers. And so it's easier for me to keep, push pause, Haley, if you don't mind, on that thaw monitor. It's easier to get down and get that semen out of the tank without exposing that to the outside temperature, I guess. So if you wouldn't mind just pausing it on that thaw monitor. There you go. So all of the shipments that ST sends out come with these thaw monitors. And generally, on the customer side, if you receive a shipment from us, that's the first thing that we recommend you do is find that thaw monitor. It's got the little ST, the G logo right on top on that tab. Find that, pull it out, make sure that it's still frozen. And generally they'll be green or blue or even orange. Most of ours are green like this, and they will be frozen liquid in the top of that. And so if you see any like dripping, you see any green liquid dripping down the bottom of that straw, or you see all the liquid in the bottom, that's definitely a warning sign. These are purposefully kept at the top of that cane instead of the bottom, because the top will be the first thing to indicate that there was any temperature change or any abnormal temperatures in there. So that's the first thing. Just make sure that semen's good. If it's not, generally we don't have any problems, but that's kind of what we go off of to know whether that semen is good upon arrival. So. And then, Ryan here does a good job of holding that canister with one hand and the goblet with one hand, and being able to get in there with those tweezers and try to keep that as low as you can. That's one thing with the quarter cc straws that would be, something we've got to work on a little harder is just the temperature. The smaller the straw, the faster that's going to be damaged by room temperature air. So try to keep that as low as you can. It's a good view of kind of how the seat is on those tweezers. Yeah, and then I always wanted to just preheat your guns. I've got a gun warmer here that we use. One of the good things actually probably one of the more underrated things about using a specific quarter cc gun versus a universal gun is that wall thickness. You know, at least I'm in Idaho. We've got some fall calving cows, and so you're breeding cows in December. Gosh, it's cold. It's not fun, but I've always felt like the quarter cc gun, where it's got a thicker wall, there's more metal in there. If you can really do a good job of keeping that gun warm, it actually is a little better insulation than like a universal gun. And so you got maybe a little more buffer. You know, I don't know that there's any studies out there on differences or whatever. I've just always felt like, gosh, if you could just have a little more material there to kind of buffer from the outside on that straw, you do a little better. But you can just let this one roll for a little bit, Haley. So as soon as you preheat your gun, preheat your sheath, the most you can preheat to try to get to that 95 to 98 degrees, the better off you are. You know, these gun warmers are about $400. You can get them through your local reps. They sound like a lot of money up front, but gosh, I think they're worth their weight in gold. They sure make life a lot easier, especially if you're breeding in the winter. So there's a good slow up. That's a quarter cc gun. Seating that straw over the plunger beforehand. Yeah, you can play that, Haley, if you'll stop it at the cedo cutter. Keep going a little more. There you go. So there are actually two different kinds of cedo cutters, just like the tweezers. There's red and white, quarter and half. This is a half. You can kind of see there's a little bit of play there with that straw up inside there. I don't know that it makes a huge difference. Probably the bigger issue with these cedo cutters that people cuss is these knives kind of get gummed up, and it's just paramount that you take those apart and clean them. You know, it's not very hard. It's one little twist, and you know, whenever you're done using those cedo cutters, just pull them apart, clean them, wipe them off. And it sure makes life a lot easier, I think, versus the scissors. It's a lot cleaner cut. It doesn't pinch the straw at all, and it allows that straw to really seat down, especially like in these, you know, these blue tip. It really allows that straw to seat down in that blue tip, and just without any semen coming back at you. So. And see how Ryan, if you want to pause that for a second, Haley, you know, he's got that straw loaded in the gun, and he's got his paper towel over there. I mean, just as many things you can do to keep that straw of semen from cooling off from the time that you pull it out of the water bath to the time it goes in the cow. You know, as many coverings as you can have. Like Luke said earlier, I mean, most of this is just about rhythm and routine. And you kind of find something that works for you. What works for me might not work for Zach or Luke or Dean. But gosh, just find a rhythm and try to protect that as much as you can and be as fast and efficient as you can. So to just make sure that you get that straw seated in the blue tip, and it'll kind of click. Some of the sheaths will click. So there's two different types of blue tip sheaths. Well, there's pushed and non-pushed, but I'm going to throw that out for a second. There's tapered, and there's they call this a twin taper. So this one you're looking at is a twin taper. It will accommodate a half cc and a quarter cc just the same. The quarter cc, there's basically two steps. The first step will take a half cc, and the second step, which is towards the right in this case, will take the quarter cc. So people say, well, I need, you know, sheaths for quarter cc's. Well, it's all the same. It'll work for both. The second kind it's a true taper. So there's the twin taper, which is this one, and then there's a true taper, and it's just a cone. And basically, the half cc straw will kind of hit the edge of that cone, if you will, kind of towards the beginning, and the 1/4 cc will go a little bit farther. And those ones won't necessarily click. You won't feel the click, but in these twin tapers, you can actually feel them click inside of there. And then a couple different styles of guns. If you want to pause that real quick. That one that you saw was a twist lock gun. A lot of the guns that ST has, that are strictly 1/4 cc's that we've given out and sell, they're this style. You put the sheath on there, and then you've got to manually just twist that on there. When those straws or those sheaths are warm, it's no big problem. When they're cold, it can be a little bit more time consuming, I guess. So there's the twist lock. And then Ben mentioned it earlier, I've got an O-ring style gun. This is kind of the old fart gun, is the old geezer gun. That's what I call it. We don't really use those much, but the O-ring style takes all these green tip sheaths. So the difference between a green tip and a blue tip is the green is slit and the blue is not. And the slit is for this reason right here. So you pull the O-ring back, you push the slit over top, maybe. There we go. It's kind of a hard edge there. You push the slit over the top, and then the O-ring locks that in place. That one, like I say, that's kind of the old style. There's a combi gun, which is just a barb. And basically, I don't have one here handy. But basically what it is, it takes a blue tip sheath. And what you do with it, get this straight here. You'll push it all the way up, and then there's a little barb about right in there, and you'll just push it right up over the barb, and it'll seat. And then when you're done, you just pull right back off the barb. There's a new style gun that works with, it's the only gun that I know of that works with every kind of sheath. It works with the green tip, it works with the blue tip. It works with the alphas, and that's actually an STgetech brand gun. This particular one, I think, I don't know if they make 1/4s and 1/2s, but how it works, like with a green tip, with a slit sheath. So you slide the sheath over it, and then it will actually clip right into that, and it'll lock it in place. And then this is spring loaded. You push that down, and it'll pop right out. So it doesn't matter if the sheath is slit or not. It'll pop right in there. Same with the blue tip. And so, if you do have a bunch of extra green tip sheaths, you're like, hey, I got to get rid of these, use them, or you just want to make it easy on your techs. These are sure easy guns because they will take everything, and they're quick. They're quick to load. They're quick to release. Like I say, the only downside, if you call it that, or maybe thing to be careful of, is that it's a universal gun. And so you just need to be sure, like we talked earlier, with loading the 1/4 cc straws on that. Anybody have any questions on guns or sheath types?
If not, Luke, what do you have anything to add there? What would be your preference, or what is your go-to combination of a AI gun and sheath when you're using 1/4 cc straws?
Personally, I'm either using a WTA gun, which don't have an example of with me. Unfortunately, I'm on the road, but it's basically got the sheath will come down over the barrel of the gun. It actually kind of clicks and locks into place, and there's kind of a plunger release. And that's a gun I just like really well. The actual straw and sheath doesn't protrude quite as far from the end of the barrel as some other guns, which there's some advantages to that, particularly for for people who are new to AI, maybe, and maybe they don't have quite the finesse yet, and maybe they're putting a little more pressure on the gun than maybe they should. That's kind of nice because that straw and sheath don't protrude as far out from the end of the barrel. You don't tend to bend that sheath and that straw if somebody's getting a little too rough. But that's just a really nice gun because, like I said, the sheath clicks in. It's really quick release when you hit that plunger. If I'm not using the WTA gun, I'm usually using a combi color. Both are really simple, easy to use. Take the universal blue tip sheaths, but that's what I use.
So Zach, if or Zach or Emily, if what's the best way for a customer to go ahead, and if they're interested in ordering maybe a quarter cc only gun, what would be the best way for a customer to do that?
So you've got a few options there as far as ordering guns or any supplies for that matter. Number one, if you're dealing with a rep, you can go ahead and just contact your rep about that. We currently don't have the ability to order any supplies online, but we do have a supply catalog that ranges anywhere from AI guns and sheaths, all units, gun warmers, all the way to heat patches, lube, gloves, anything you can think of there. But contact your reps or any of us as regional managers. And then if you also deal with the call center, you can call into the call center and they'd be more than happy to send those out for you. Most of our supplies are going to come out of our Ohio facility. And so depending on where you're at, just keep that in mind. If you've got breeding projects coming up, definitely take an inventory of what you've got beforehand. Make sure you got all the supplies you need. And if not, just want to make sure we have enough time to get everything there for you in time for your upcoming projects or any delays in UPS, that kind of thing. With the way the world's working right now, you just never know in terms of how quick it's going to get there.
Awesome, thank you.
So we can keep rolling there, Haley. If you... Yeah, there he's just kind of bleeding the system, just getting any air out. You can keep rolling. And then, you know, as soon as you get that loaded, right back in your shirt or right back in the warmer till you're ready to go in the cow there. So then I'll turn it back over to you.
Oh, well, Jared, I guess first I'd like to thank you for putting that video together. I thought you did a very nice job, again, commentating for us here this evening. And again, apologize for those technical difficulties. Although they do happen, I think we make the best of our outcome here. But I'd just like to open it up to all of our regional managers. We have everybody on here tonight. Dean and Emily are also joining us tonight. So I'd just like to open it up to you guys. If there's anything in addition that wouldn't be that we didn't cover in the video, maybe that Jared didn't go into any more detail. If you have anything that, whether that's tips or tricks or things, just little things that you have found over time to become more successful when using the quarter cc straws, I would just like to kind of open it up to all of our regional managers for your input now.
Really hard to get right now. But if you want to get on a wait list for one, I think we've gotten restocked here recently, but certain things might be a little challenging to get. But if you want to know what all we do have available, reach out to your rep, regional manager, or the call center and let us know, and we can get a copy of that catalog sent out to you for you to look over.
Very good. Thank you, Zach. Dean or Emily, is there anything in your experience in using quarter cc straws, or maybe some problems or the good, bad, or anything like that you've heard with phone calls here lately? Anything you'd like to add tonight?
I guess the only thing that I would add or reiterate that I think Jared hit on is just to do quarter CCs, use them with confidence, just like you used to with the half CC. The industry is continuing to move that direction, and there's no reason not to get excited about what quarter CCs have to offer as far as keeping up with everything that the half CC did and being able to improve storage. And so if there's ever any questions, concerns that you have, I don't think you should hesitate to reach out to anybody on the team, and don't hesitate to reach out.
I'll touch a little bit on kind of a common misconception there too with the quarter CC straws in the traditional crowd that's used to using half CC. A lot of people think because the straw is half the size of what a normal half CC is that they're getting less semen, which is not the case whatsoever. You're actually getting the same amount of semen, you're just getting less extender. So it's a more concentrated dose of semen or media in that straw. And so the cell counts are the same, anywhere from 25 to 30 million for conventional straws. And then our Sext Ultra 4M obviously has 4 million straws, but those have been quarter CC all the way along. But any of your conventional semen that you buy is going to be the same concentration in terms of cell count and quality that we are used to sending out in our half CC straws.
Will, that brings up another question, maybe geared more towards the Sext Ultra 4M versus the quarter CC straws. But I have several people say, well, I really want to get this cow bred to Sext female or Sext male. Should I use 2 straws? And the short answer is yes and no. If you want to, you're better off to use those 2 straws at offset intervals. So if you use one at 18 and one at 22, for instance, versus using 2 at 18 or 2 at 22. There's nothing 2 straws is going to do that one wouldn't, other than the timing. So just another tip, I guess, if you really have that cow you want to get bred, just offset those a little bit.
Absolutely. I think y'all have brought up some very good points and covered a lot of things in a lot of detail, and hopefully able to answer a lot of questions or maybe some common misconceptions. And Dean, certainly appreciate you being out here tonight. And I don't think we've formally introduced Dean as one of the new regional managers, but has a really good point about using the quarter CC straws with confidence, and really just focusing there on the details that Luke and Jared really went through and highlighted and emphasized during tonight's presentation. But if anybody doesn't have any questions, if any of the regional managers or anybody else of the beef team doesn't have anything to add, Haley, I think we're okay with wrapping up tonight's webinar.
Awesome. Well, again, I just want to thank all of our regional managers for being on tonight. And I hope this was educational and also beneficial to a lot of you who joined us. Like Ben mentioned earlier, we do have a really great page on quarter CC straws, both in our fall 2021 catalog and our spring 2022 catalog. So if you look in the spring 2022 catalog, it's on page 72. And then it's also on page 17 in the fall 2021 catalog. And it just kind of reiterates what was discussed tonight, talks about a lot of the advantages of quarter CC straws, what a lot of the myths are that surround them versus half CC. And we also just kind of, highlight the main points for when using them. So we hope that everybody enjoyed this webinar. And again, if you have friends or family or customers that didn't get to join us tonight, I post all of these webinars on our STgenetics Beef YouTube channel. So you can always go there and find them. It's usually a couple days after we do these that I get them uploaded. So be sure to check them out there and follow us on social media.